On my husband's 80th birthday, our son gave a toast, saying, "Dad sacrificed everything for this family." I raised my glass, smiled, and said, "Funny, I don't remember him being there when I worked 3 jobs." The room fell silent. My granddaughter whispered, "Tell me the real story." That night, I unlocked a chest I'd buried for decades. Inside were photographs, letters, and one recording that would shatter everything they thought they knew. It was my husband's 80th birthday, and the whole family had come together at our house in Des Moines, Iowa. The dining room was packed, our 3 kids, their spouses, grandkids running around, old friends, and there was this air of celebration, like we were all here to honor some great man. After dinner, our oldest son, Rick, stood up. Glass in hand, he smiled and started his toast. "Let's all raise a glass to Dad, a man who sacrificed everything for this family. We wouldn't be here without him." The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking. I looked at my husband, Walt, sitting across from me, the so-called man who sacrificed everything. He looked so proud, smiling like a king on his throne. My hands were shaking. I raised my glass, but my voice didn't match the warmth in my smile. "Funny," I said, clear and cold. "I don't remember him being there when I worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on." The room fell into a vacuum. No laughter, no awkward chuckle, just pure silence. Even the grandkids stopped fidgeting. My husband's face fell, like I'd slapped him in front of everyone. And then I heard my granddaughter, Ellie, whisper under her breath, "Grandma, tell me the real story." That night, when everyone had left, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor for a long time. Then I got up, walked to the attic, and pulled out the old wooden chest I hadn't touched in decades. It was heavy, covered in dust, but my hands knew exactly how to open it. Inside were the photographs, me in my waitress uniform at the diner, me at the grocery store stacking shelves, me sewing at the kitchen table by lamplight. There were old letters, bills overdue, foreclosure warnings, and Walt's handwritten notes that said things like "not my problem" and "let her handle it." But what broke me was the cassette tape. A recording I'd hidden away, because even then, I knew it would destroy everything. I played it, and the sound of his voice, younger but sharp as ever, came out clear. "I can't deal with her anymore, Susan. She's always nagging, never satisfied. Hell, if she wants to work herself to death, let her." A woman's voice, laughing softly, said, "Maybe she'll just keel over and die, and then we can have the house to ourselves." I sat there, the cold truth washing over me, while the man downstairs slept like a baby in the bed we shared for 50 years. The next morning, I made coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. Ellie came in, eyes wide, curious. I slid the chest across the table. "Come here, sweetheart," I said. And I told her everything. I told her how Walt had an affair with a woman named Susan back in the 70s. How he drained our bank account for gambling and left me to cover the bills. How he didn't show up to the kids' school plays or graduations because he was too busy working late, which really meant drinking with his buddies or sneaking around with Susan. How I cleaned houses, worked at the diner, took temp jobs, anything I could to keep our family afloat. Ellie's face crumpled in shock, but she listened. She wanted the truth, and now she had it. That night, I sat alone in the living room. The chest sat open, its secrets spilling into the air. I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Because the truth was out now, and there was no going back. The day after the party, the phone started ringing early. First Rick, then my daughter Rachel, then my youngest, Tommy. They all wanted to know what I meant by that comment at the party. "Mom," Rick said, sounding annoyed, "was that really necessary?" I told him, "If you don't like the truth, you can stop calling me." He paused, then said, "What truth? What's going on?" I told him to come by the house that night. All of them. When they showed up, they looked uncomfortable, like they were afraid I'd say something else to ruin the golden image of their father. Walt wasn't there, of course. He'd gone out to play cards at the senior center, acting like nothing happened. I sat them all down in the living room. Ellie sat next to me, holding my hand, eyes wide and waiting. I opened the chest, pulled out the stack of photographs, and laid them on the coffee table one by one. The diner uniform. The grocery store apron. The foreclosure notice. The eviction threats. Then I pulled out the letters, his gambling debts, the letters from the casino, the ones from the credit card company. And then, finally, the cassette tape. I pressed play. They heard his voice, clear as day. "I can't deal with her anymore, Susan. Let her work herself to death." Rachel gasped. Tommy just stared, mouth open. Rick clenched his fists. "That's not Dad," Rick tried to say, but I cut him off. "Oh, it's him," I said. "Your father spent years chasing another woman while I worked 3 jobs to keep this family together. I paid the mortgage. I kept the lights on. I made sure you had food, clothes, and a roof over your head. He wasn't there." They all sat in stunned silence. "I didn't say anything before because I didn't want to destroy your childhood," I told them. "I wanted you to have a father, even if he didn't deserve that title." Rachel started crying. Ellie looked at her mom, then at me. "Grandma. What happens now?" I stared at the chest, at the ugly truth it held. "Now, we stop pretending." That night, Walt came home and saw us all sitting there, the chest still open. He tried to play it off, like it was nothing. "What's all this?" he asked. I looked him dead in the eye. "They know." His face twisted, and for a moment, I saw fear flicker across it. He tried to laugh it off, tried to charm his way out like he always did. "Oh, come on, it was a long time ago. We were young, foolish." "Don't," I said, my voice sharp as a blade. "Don't you dare minimize it. They heard the tape. They read your letters." He looked at the kids, expecting support. None of them spoke. Rachel finally broke the silence. "Dad, how could you?" He tried to argue, to explain, but no one was buying it anymore. That night, Walt packed a bag and left. I didn't ask where he was going, and I didn't care. But I wasn't done yet. Because I had one more plan. A way to make sure the whole truth came out, not just in this family, but for everyone who thought they knew the man who claimed to have sacrificed everything. I wasn't going to stop until everyone saw him for who he really was. After Walt left that night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the chest open, staring at the pieces of my life I'd hidden away for so long. The next morning, I made a decision. I called the local community center. Every year, Walt had been the guest of honor at their big volunteer appreciation banquet, where he'd give a speech about dedication, sacrifice, and family. I told them I had a story to tell, and I asked if I could speak at the next event. They hesitated, but I told them this was important, and after a long pause, they agreed. 2 weeks later, I walked into the banquet hall. It was packed. People clapped when they saw Walt, and he smiled that smug smile, like a man who'd never been caught. But when I took the stage, the room went quiet. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I began, my voice steady. "But I have something to say." I opened the chest, right there on stage, and held up the photographs. I told the whole story, the jobs I worked, the bills I paid, the nights I spent alone while Walt was with another woman. I played the tape. His voice filled the room, crystal clear. People gasped. I could see the faces in the crowd, the neighbors, the old friends, the community leaders. All of them staring at him in shock. Walt tried to stand, tried to interrupt, but I kept going. I read the letters, one by one. I told them how he gambled away our savings while I clipped coupons just to buy groceries. When I was finished, there was dead silence. Then, someone in the back of the room clapped. Another person joined in. And then, the whole room erupted in applause. Walt sat frozen, humiliated in front of everyone. He never showed up at the community center again. The fallout was fast. Rick, Rachel, and Tommy confronted him separately, some angry, some heartbroken. None of them looked at him the same way again. Rick stopped calling him. Rachel took her kids and didn't invite him to their birthdays anymore. Tommy told him he was no longer welcome at his house. Even Ellie, who had once adored her grandfather, wouldn't speak to him. But it wasn't just family. People in town started whispering. The men who used to slap him on the back at the diner stopped coming by. His poker buddies stopped calling. He was a man no one wanted to be around anymore. I heard he tried to start over with Susan, but she left him after a few months when his money ran dry and his health started to fail. As for me, I finally started living. I sold the house I had worked to keep, and moved into a small apartment closer to Ellie and Rachel. I took art classes. I traveled to places I'd only ever dreamed of. Walt died a few years later, alone, in a small rented room. No big funeral. No speeches. No family gathered around. Ellie spoke at a small family gathering after he passed. She said, "Grandpa taught me a lot, but Grandma taught me everything. The chest is still with me, tucked away in my closet. Not as a burden, but as a reminder. A reminder that the truth may stay buried for a while, but it always has a way of coming out. And when it does, it burns everything down, but it sets you free." A few weeks after the banquet, Walt called. He left a message on my answering machine, his voice shaking. "Please, can we talk?" I didn't call back. Instead, I hired a lawyer. I wanted to protect myself, make sure that if Walt tried to come back, there would be no way for him to take what was left of what I had worked for. The lawyer helped me separate everything, the house, the bank accounts, the retirement funds. My name was on everything, but I wasn't taking any chances. I also went to the local paper. I told them I had a story to share, and I gave them everything, the photographs, the letters, even the recording. They ran a front-page feature, "Local Family Man Exposed, Decades of Lies Unraveled." It spread fast. People in town stopped Walt on the street, whispering, staring. His poker friends dropped him. Even his church stopped inviting him to volunteer. But it wasn't just about humiliating him. I wanted him to feel what I had felt for years, isolated, invisible, and betrayed. One day, Walt showed up at my door, unannounced. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes red. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight of the truth had finally sunk in. "Please," he said, "can we just talk? I have nowhere else to go." I stared at him, this man who had taken so much from me, who had built a life on my back while he lived in comfort. I thought about all the nights I cried alone in bed while he was out. The times I had to tell the kids they couldn't have new shoes because we couldn't afford them, not because I wasn't working, but because he had drained the account at the casino. I thought about the tape, how he had wished me dead. So I told him, clear and steady, "No. You can't come back here. I don't owe you anything." I shut the door in his face and locked it. He stood there for a minute, then turned and walked down the driveway. I watched him leave, feeling the weight in my chest lift, piece by piece. After that, I cut all contact. I changed my number. I told the kids he was no longer part of my life, and if they wanted to see him, that was up to them, but I wouldn't be there. None of them did. Walt's health declined fast. He ended up in a nursing home, alone. I heard he'd tried to tell some of the nurses about his sacrifices for his family, but they knew the truth. Word had gotten around. He died 2 years later. There was no funeral, just a small, quiet burial. The kids didn't go. I didn't go. A few months after his death, I got a call from his lawyer. Walt had left a will. He tried to leave everything to the kids, but they wanted no part of it. The house was still in my name, so I sold it and split the money between my grandkids. Ellie came over after it was all settled. She sat at my kitchen table, looking at me like I was the strongest woman she'd ever known. "Grandma," she said, "you're a legend." I smiled, a real smile this time. Because I had taken back my life, exposed the man who tried to bury me, and made sure the truth was known. That chest in the attic? I burned it. I didn't need it anymore. My story was out in the open, and I was free.